Alright, thanks for coming back. So let's finish up with part two and start to make this shape a little bit more like the image and the diagram that I used earlier. So we're going to continue on. We're going to actually do these cross shapes and then the side curves and create a parameter. And this is probably the most interesting part of it all, which is kind of dividing that curve so that we can eventually get to this kind of quilted shape that we need to get to. That's all that happens right here. So let's get started here before I continue talking here. Let's keep going. So we've got our arcs on the base portion of it, right? So, but we actually need to create the cross point arcs just to give us the overall shape. Now, I've used them and I haven't used them, so it's just to give us a basic shape. So essentially we need to grab this point, our top point that's controllable by a parameter, and then this point instead of this point. We don't want the corners, we want to inset that a little bit to stay with the shape. So since we know that point, which is this point right here, that's finally going to come into play, which is kind of nice. So let's go ahead and grab those point parameters, which of course are all these little points right here. Let's do an arc, ARC by 3 point. Let's pull that off just a little bit here and then drag it down. We know that the midpoint is going to be this point on both of them. See, this isn't so hard. This is pretty easy. We already know the midpoint, and now we just need to find the cross points. And we can find that out simply. I apologize. Let me zoom back here just a little bit. Turn those points off. That makes more sense. Okay, now it's a little bit clearer to see. We can see this point, this point, this point, and this point. Perfect. So we need to grab this point, and we already have our second point. We need to grab this point right here, which I believe was this right here. Boom, we got our arc. Nice, quick, simple, easy. We want to grab that point, and if I'm not mistaken, that point, and now we have our basic overall shape. Again, we don't necessarily need those cross points, but it does give us the understanding of what that shape is. So once we start to pull this in, we can actually get some pretty interesting shapes out of this. So pull that back up. We're just starting to see the wireframe of that beautiful quilted shape. So now that we've got our cross arcs, we're going to need to grab kind of the minor arcs, if you will, to get it, again, solidify this shape just a little bit. So we are going to do another arc fairly quickly here. I do want to grab maybe possibly the midpoint of this shape, but we want to create an offset of these points because, lo and behold, that shape doesn't actually follow the ground plane. It curves backwards on itself. So let's offset some points. So in order to do that, I'm going to type in offset, but I actually have a special package for that. And if you grab a couple different packages, geez, to be perfectly honest, I kind of forgot where this one was. So download Bakery, grab builds, black box, ampersand by Colin. This is just some great stuff. You should be able to find it. Steam and Spring nodes are springs and steams are definitely required for quite a bit of these nodes. So once you find this package, offset point z value, we're going to go ahead and grab those points. We have to build a little bit of a header off this, so I'm actually going to create a list. I'm going to bring all these points down, combine them into one, so I can do these all at once. So otherwise I'd have to have 4 of these different z point values from each of these midpoints. I don't want to have to do that. I just assume header them all off, kind of like a car exhaust manifold, perform the operation, and then have them move from there. I'm going to type in 15 just to get started. I might come back and do this as an integer slider. Probably should just do that right now, but we're going to keep it as it is for now. And then of course I'm going to double click and I'm going to break down, really just go through and say I want all these different parts to break out again. So like I said, once again, header off into these points, create a simple single list of all the midpoints. See how they all highlighted here? Offset them. Oh, okay, it already did it. So I can create these offset midpoints. You can call them offset mids. You can call them offset midpoint by parameters, something to that effect. Whatever you want to call them, I guess. Push them up a little bit so we can start to get these arcs in just a little bit. So we've got that arc. We really need to grab, let's say, this point. Let's see, there's probably a better way to do this, but that point, and this point. Just kind of work my way down until I find, of course, this is the last one I pick. Pick that midpoint. See, that's the shape we want. It's not flat like this back onto the ground. It actually curves out and then curves back in. Just a beautiful shape. Just beautiful. So let's come back in, and now that we have those, it's just really just a matter of process of elimination. I'm going to create 5 different points here. Obviously, I'm not going to use this midpoint anymore. So now I know I just grabbed that point. So I've got this point, and now I need this midpoint here. So we're just, or I'm sorry, this new corner point, which is this point right here. We're starting to get that shape in. Okay, copy it down one more time, grab a different midpoint. So now we've got this point, I need to grab that point. Shouldn't take long for me to figure out this point here. We're going to end on that. Fantastic. Now I can start shutting some lower curves off. Now that I've got that point, I just translated it up. That's why I need this kind of curved arc here. I need to get to this point so that I can push it up and control it on this kind of oblong curve point. Just beautiful geometry. Like I'm Bob Ross over here, painting a picture. Okay. So, I don't really need any of these arcs. Here, tell you what, let's start shutting them off because they're kind of in the way. Didn't mean to do that. So we know we need that point, which is already connected to the bottom. We know we're going to probably need that point for our second point, and we know we're going to need that point right there for this point. Look at that. We've got our shape. I need one more shape because we're actually going to just make a loft shape just to get a good feeling going here about this kind of dome shape, if you will. Before we actually start separating this out as a quilt, if you will, we want to get one more arc in here, just to get the shape right. So I'm going to move all these down. As a matter of fact, we're going to need a list right there. Control C, Control V. I'm actually going to make a couple different shapes here. So let's get this point, this top point, and this point right here, so we can start to create the sections that we need for these for this loft here. Learning something new. We're going to do a loft. So we obviously know that we need to grab the highest point, and that's going to be the center point of that arc, right? So we've got that center point arc, but now I need this shape, this point, or this point, or this point and this point. So I'm just going to kind of take a stab out here as far as these points go. So I know I need these points. Most likely a 0 and a 2 are going to give me that cross point. So I know I'm going to need this arc, this arc, this arc, following this guide curve and following this guide curve. Why am I using that nomenclature? Because I'm going to do a loft. I'm going to do it by cross sections and by guide curves. Now, I could do it by these cross sections and these guide curves, but what I'm going to use are multiple guide curves off of multiple cross sections. Yeah, I'm pretty sure you could do it either way, but that's not the point. The order of these matters tremendously. So I want to start with this one. Sorry, I'm going to move that one down. And now that I have this one, I want to go to this guide curve next. A lot of people tend to forget about that. That's going to be a guide curve, and that's my final curve. So that becomes my cross section. Right? See how those three highlight? I want to go from here to here to here, and I want to follow this curve, and I want to follow this curve. Process of elimination, I know these are my guide curves. I'm going to combine them into this list, move them over there, boom. Look at that. Look at this complex geometry. Now, let's have a little fun here before we continue. I do like to at least evaluate the work a little bit. Man, this would be great 3D printed. It looks like a acoustical panel, 24-inch by 24-inch acoustical panel, but that's not what it is. Look at the shape that I can get out of it. That's fun. Maybe I want that shape. Maybe I don't even want to continue on with this, but I want maybe this shape that kind of bows down, maybe catches some water or something to that effect. Fairly interesting to see that live feedback. Imagine this in like SketchUp or some other program. Rhino can do this, but only with Grasshopper. But in SketchUp, I'd have to copy or model or do all this kind of work just to get to this, where I'm just simply going to ask the computer to compute this for me and give me all these different shapes and iterations in between. Fantastic. Beautiful shape. So, that's the end of this. We're going to colorize it real quick because we always want to learn something new, right? So we want to throw in color by alpha, red, green, blue, and we want to do a geometry color. So in this instance, it's the surface. I'm going to double click again here. Hold on. I'm going to do 99 for the alpha transparency. I'll do 150. I'm going to do 180. That's kind of my default. I don't always turn on an alpha channel. I'll use just different combinations of 180 and 150 just to get my color. I'll turn this off. So it's right now Dynamo's trying to look at this surface and this surface. So if I turn it off and turn that preview off, I get to see this information. I get to see it transparent. And if I really wanted to take it one tiny step further, I'm going to go over to old college classmate of mine, Nate Miller, to his lunchbox plugin for Dynamo. Grab wire grid. I'm going to grab, well, technically I can grab this surface here. I can double click 5 just to make it quick and make it easy. And just kind of diagrid that out. As a matter of fact, I can turn this one off right now. How do I have two? Oh, I have two of those because I have this. Okay, we can turn that off too. That's fine. Look at that shape. Now, you might be thinking, oh, hey, that's the shape. Why would I go any further than this? Because I've got all the points in between. That's fantastic. This just automatically does it. Well, the problem with that, now that we're essentially right in between these two parts, is the designer turned that grid sideways. So we're no longer going this direction, we're going diagonally. So in the next lesson, we're actually going to blow through all these last remaining steps and talk about how to divide a curve among its points. So we can start to get these different shapes. So we can get our kind of billowing quilt shape. So we're about at this point right here. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that and join us for part 3 of Dynamo Next, episode 1 for season 3. So don't forget to subscribe.